In 2015, Portal Games released the small card drafting game Tides of Time. In the game, players utilized card drafting and tableau building to build the strongest empire that would stand the test of time. But then, in 2016, a variation of the game was released called Tides of Madness, with a Lovecraftian theme. Now, is this just a retheming of Tides of Time, cashing in on Cthulhu, or does Tides of Madness actually introduce enough new content to stand on its own? Well, let's find out as we compare and contrast Tides of Time and Tides of Madness. Alright, first off, here's what's similar between the two games. Both games are comprised of a deck of 18 cards that are used over the course of 3 scored rounds. To begin, the deck is shuffled and each player is dealt 5 cards. The remaining cards are temporarily set aside face down. Players then simultaneously select a card from their hand and reveal it. Players then exchange the remaining cards in their hands and repeat the process until all of the cards in their hands have been played on the table. Then, a wave of victory points are calculated, which signals the end of the round. Now, in both games, players will then prepare for the next round by selecting one card in their tableau to discard for the rest of the game, and one that will remain on the table. The rest of the cards are returned to the player's hands. Now, in Tides of Time, a token is placed on the cards left on the table. This token signifies that the cards are now locked and cannot be removed during subsequent rounds of the game. Tides of Madness does not have these tokens, but still has the same restriction. Cards that were locked in previous rounds remain locked on the table. Another difference in Tides of Madness, and perhaps the greatest difference between the two games, is that players will receive a Madness token for each card they played in the round that contained the Madness icon. The player that received the most Madness tokens that round may then either gain 4 victory points or discard one of their Madness tokens. This may make collecting Madness tokens seem like an attractive option until one discovers that if a player ever accumulates 9 or more Madness tokens, they lose the game immediately. After this step, the players are dealt 2 more cards from the deck, and play continues with a second round, played the same way. After the second round, there's a third and final round that takes place. The card drafting and tableau building mechanisms shared between the two games are quite similar, but there are some differences. In addition to the differences in locking cards and accumulating Madness tokens, several of the 18 cards were changed between the two versions. These changes vary from small tweaks to balance the scoring to introducing completely different cards. Here's a look at the cards to see what's different between the two versions. In Tides of Time, the pink-suited card that gains you points for each set of blue and green icons that you have in your tableau scores you 5 points. But in Tides of Madness, this has been increased to 6 points. In Tides of Time, the card that scores a player 13 points when they have all 5 suits in their tableau is in the green suit. But in Tides of Madness, it has been changed to be a card in the yellow suit. Several cards appear only in Tides of Time. The card that allows the player to win all ties, double the amount of their most numerous suits, gain 8 points for scoring the highest with a single card, and scoring 8 points for having the majority in suits with only 1 card in the game. Their replacements in Tides of Madness are cards that score the player 4 points for each suit majority they have, double the points of the card that they played most recently, a card that awards the player 1 victory point for each Madness token they have accumulated, and a card that is a wild suit, but additionally forces the player to take 1 Madness token from their opponent. Now, one thing that's neat is that the decks in both games have the same card backs, and this means that owners of both games could potentially mix the cards, creating a variety of different decks when playing. But even so, how does Tides of Madness compare to the original Tides of Time? Well, it is definitely built on the exact same foundation of mechanisms. The card drafting, the combo building, and an even majority of the cards are all identical. But what really sets Tides of Madness apart is the extra layer of managing the madness tokens that the players will accumulate. It's an interesting new thing that players have to worry about that blends into the existing game without feeling tacked on. And the fact that a player can actually benefit from collecting more madness than the other player each round, without collecting too much, mind you, is an excellent mechanism that adds a welcome dash of tension to the game. Because of this extra layer to the gameplay, I personally would lean towards Tides of Madness if I had to choose just one of the two to add to my collection. But in the end, choose the one that has the level of complexity that works best for you, because you really can't go wrong with either one. I hope that this comparison of Tides of Time and Tides of Madness has been helpful. And for more board game news, reviews, and commentary, be sure to subscribe to both the Pair of Dice Paradise and Dice Tower YouTube channels. And follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more board game conversations as well. And in the meantime, I've been Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Double the points of the card that they played most recently